Uh-oh.
In her last two fights. Good way hitting him from that way down.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The latest in the career of amateur standout from Brazil, Beatriz Ferreira. The IBF orders Beatriz Ferreira to face Yanina del Carmen Lescano for the newly vacated title.
Wasn't she supposed to be fighting Janicevic?
Beatriz Ferreira, the IBF's #1 contender at lightweight, has been ordered to contest the organization's vacant world title against Yanina Lescano. The IBF's decision comes following Jelena Janicevic, the division's previous #2 contender, dropping from her position to fight for the vacant title within the IBF's ratings for undisclosed reasons.
We know what her reasons were.
She didn't want to get her ass kicked. The IBF had previously ordered British duo Caroline Dubois and Rhiannon Dixon to contest for the organization's vacant title following Katie Taylor's decision to drop her unified titles at 135 following her undisputed super lightweight success last November against Chantel Cameron.
Don't forget how we got here.
Initially, the IBF ordered Caroline Dubois and Rhiannon Dixon to fight, but Rhiannon is shooting for the WBO.
Which then left Caroline Dubois to contend with Beatriz Ferreira.
Caroline didn't want to do that, so then it came down to Beatriz and Jelena Janicevic.
Then Jelena Janicevic didn't want to do that, so now it's come down to Beatriz Ferreira and Yanina Lescano.
Beatriz is a very special fighter, a special talent, an amateur standout that has everything it takes in just a handful of fights to see herself become a world champion here and now. And already, she's a hot potato. Already, you saw Caroline Dubois' reaction to that order, and you see Jelena Janicevic's reaction to that order. They didn't want to do it.
They don't want no parts of Beatriz.
Here and now, she's a high risk, low reward. Here and now, she's a hot potato, but perhaps with an alphabet title on her waist, perhaps with that will increase her profile and thereby increase the incentive to take her on. They cannot avoid her forever. They cannot ignore her.
The caveat.
Beatriz Ferreira has been dividing her time between the amateur ranks and the pro ranks. If you don't see her as often as you should, as often as you'd like, it's because she's still competing in the amateur ranks. It's my understanding she's still fighting in Olympic qualifiers. She wants to go back to the Olympics to win another medal.
That's the catch-22 with Beatriz.
A gifted athlete, gifted physical specimen, a great boxer with power and a fan-friendly style that perhaps you'd see more often if she weren't dividing her time between the amateurs and the pros. Very recently, Australia's own amateur standout, Australia's own Sky Nicholson, she had to make a decision. She had to make a choice between either trying to go back to the Olympics or continuing on with her pro career.
She's a matchroom fighter too.
And if it feels like she's a bit further along than Beatriz Ferreira, that you often see Sky Nicholson more than you see Beatriz Ferreira, that would be the why, that would be the reason, because Sky made her decision. She made a choice to continue on the pro route and put the amateur route behind her.
Whereas Beatriz hasn't.
She still does have this title shot, this world title opportunity. The IBF stated, be advised that the #2 rated Beatriz Ferreira and the #3 rated Yanina Lescano are the highest ranked available contenders in the IBF's lightweight division and are being ordered to participate in an IBF female lightweight vacant championship title bout. IBF Championships Committee Chairman Carlos Ortiz informed both parties in an official letter obtained by Ring Magazine. The winner will be the IBF female lightweight champion.
Deadline to get the deal done is in April.
Ferreira, who turned professional in November of 2022, following her Olympic success, has swiftly found herself on the verge of fighting for a world title. The Brazilian harbors ambitions of becoming an Olympic champion in Paris later this year, having qualified for the upcoming Games last year, following her victory in March of 2023 in India, claiming the IBA's Women's World Championship and her spot in Paris. Lescano of Argentina dropped a wide points decision to Caroline Dubois last year at London's York Hall, and in 2022, the year before, lost narrowly to Rio 2016 Olympic gold medalist Estelle Mosley.
There's going to be a stark contrast between how Estelle Mosley handled Yanina and how Beatrice handles Yanina. You'll see.
Estelle Mosley, Olympic gold medalist of France Estelle Mosley. She struggled with Yanina Lescano, but Beatrice
won't.
Beatrice is gonna fuck her up. Beatrice is gonna beat the shit out of this girl. She is. In spite of all of her amateur success, she's not one of these amateurs that's stuck with an amateur style.
Like Estelle Mosley.
Beatrice has a fan-friendly, TV-friendly style that is adequately suited for both the pro ranks and the amateurs. The only caveat with her is that she's dividing her time between both the amateurs and the pros, so you don't see her as often as you should.
The deadline to make the fight is next month. The deadline to make the fight between Beatrice and Yanina is in April, which could mean the fight happens in May, maybe June. She'll run out, beat the hell out of Yanina, then go back to the amateurs, see if she can't win another medal.
She's a go-getter. She's a motherfucker.
Why do you think Carolyn didn't want to fight her?
See how long it takes for Matchroom to make this fight happen, this fight between Beatrice and Yanina. Men's middleweight news, recent set of comments from newly crowned WBA middleweight champion Erislandy Lara, who labels himself the modern-day Bernard Hopkins. He's not overlooking Michael Zerafa. He says, "I'm looking forward to getting back in the ring and defending my title, especially on this first event with PBC on Prime Video. I feel like I'm the modern-day Bernard Hopkins, and that I can keep doing this for years. I know that Zerafa has been waiting patiently for this opportunity, so he's going to be hungry on fight night, but he's going to realize that he's now on the world-class level, facing the best fighter in the division."
This is going down on the undercard of Zoo versus Thurman.
Scheduled for 12 rounds in the men's middleweight division, which is dead as a doorknob. This wasn't even the PBC's original plan. As far back as last year, several months into last year, the plan was to put Lara in there with Danny Garcia at a catchweight. Have Lara defend the newly obtained WBA title against him. But for whatever reason, that took too long to make.
Yeah.
You can speculate that perhaps Danny wasn't going to get the kind of money that he wanted for the fight.
That maybe money was an issue, and that's why it was taking so long.
But that this was the original plan, there's no discussion, there's no debate. That's what they wanted to do, but not what they ended up doing. It took so long that the WBA decided to order the fight between Zerafa and Erislandy Lara. Michael Zerafa, his mandatory challenger,
He was getting impatient. He was becoming vocal. Where initially it was reported that they paid him to step aside, according to Michael, he never actually got paid to step aside. So he missed out on all of last year. He sat out the entirety of last year waiting for this world title opportunity, and it's finally here. Yeah.
A little over 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
Erislandy Lara fancies himself a modern-day Bernard Hopkins. Erislandy Lara fancies himself the best middleweight in the world, both which seem to me to be baseless claims. It's baseless.
I think Yanni Bekalimkanalai, this division's only unified champion, would have something to say about that. I think he would disagree.
So you wonder, if Erislandy Lara, in what is his first defense of his newly obtained WBA middleweight title, if he stays champion and he wins, does he stay at the PBC? Does he stay there? The only reason he has the title is because Gennady Golovkin unofficially retired. Unofficially. Gennady was ordered to fight him. Gennady did not comply with the order, so the title went to Lara.
Now that he's got it,
He's going to defend it against Michael Zerafa, but if he wins, what does he do after that? Because you're talking about a fighter who was never that popular, even in his prime, even in his heyday at 154. He was never that big a name. He was never that big a ticket seller. And here today, he's in his early 40s.
no marquee value.
How big a part of the PBC's bottom line is Erislandy Lara here today? What can he do for them? And what can they do for him?
They couldn't make that Danny Garcia fight happen in a timely fashion.
He sat out all of last year. They're making this fight happen, but this is not a big money fight. This is not a big price. He's not going to get a big price or a big payday for this.
They don't have that many fight dates.
Think about their current circumstances. What's the biggest fight they can make for Erislandy Lara? If he wins and successfully defends the WBA middleweight title,
Now what?
Yanibek Alimkhanuly needs opponents. This division needs a shot in the arm. The PBC, they don't have that many fight dates, so if Lara wins, what says he doesn't go over to Top Rank? Take that WBA title over there. See what it's worth to them.
Why not?
You lost an entire year last year. You lost all that time that you won't get back waiting for the PBC to make a Danny Garcia fight. And in the end, they didn't even make it.
You want to stay over there?
If you win, you want to stay over there? If you lose, if Michael Zerafa, who sat out all of last year himself, he didn't fight all of last year, just like Lara didn't fight all of last year. If he manages to beat Lara,
that changes things.
Michael is younger than Erislandy Lara by several years, an Australian national who, if he were to become WBA champion, he could use that belt to lure his old buddy, his domestic rival, Tim Tszyu, to move up in weight and take him on for it. That could be a big fight in Australia.
Bill it as a pay-per-view on Foxtel.
Get the Vegemite out, kick back, and enjoy the show.
Could do that if he wins.
Maybe he defends the belt once or twice against domestic level guys to build it up. He doesn't have to do it right away. But Tim Tszyu versus Michael Zerafa for a WBA middleweight title, you could definitely sell that in Australia.
Something to think about.
It's intriguing, this fight between Michael and Erislandy Lara. It's intriguing because while Erislandy Lara exhibits a higher ceiling, has exhibited a higher ceiling than Michael Zerafa, and has competed at a higher level than Michael Zerafa, he's getting long in the tooth. He is in his early 40s. He hasn't fought in over a year. And even if Michael hasn't fought in over a year,
so
he's still younger.
It's intriguing.
I think if Lara wins, he should just see about going to Top Rank. Maybe fighting Yanibek for a 7-figure purse. I don't imagine he's making very much for this Michael Zerafa fight. This is not the kind of fight you break the bank over.
You don't.
He wins this thing, stays WBA champion. I could go for Erislandy Lara versus Yanibek Alimkhanuly for 3 of the 4 major titles at this weight. This division desperately needs a shot in the arm.
Ever since Canelo Alvarez moved up and Gennady Golovkin unofficially retired, this division is dead as a doorknob.
Currently, the longest reigning champion at this weight hasn't fought at this weight in something like 2 going on 3 years. I'm talking about Jermall Charlo.
Bum Charlo, Panhandler Charlo.
He's been WBC champion at this weight for a while now, but he hasn't fought at this weight for a while now, and I don't think he's going to.
Oh, his last fight was well above the middleweight limit against Jose Benavidez.
He's not coming back to middleweight. Middleweight, in a very general sense, it just sucks. Let's see what Lara can do with Michael Zerafa at the end of the month. Let's see if he can stay WBA middleweight champion and what he does after that.
One, I've never met a heavyweight who's ever been as quick as me.
Well, perhaps not, but this isn't a run-of-the-mill heavyweight. This is a cruiserweight who moved up in weight, and I do think he's faster than you.
And 2,
I might also add that he doesn't have the same bad habits that you do between fights.
he doesn't come from that type of background where he can outspeed me or outmaneuver me.
You weren't too fast to get out of the way of Francis Ngannou's punches.
I've said it time and time again, yeah?
What?
I've got that American style with the European conditioning. I've never met a European man. A man with his hands up round his face, moving his head a little bit like a European amateur who can beat me.
Then what was John McDermott? People act like because that fight happened so long ago that it doesn't count or it doesn't matter. You were younger then than you are now, fresher.
Say no more. I look at Usyk, he's a stiff white man who moves his head a little bit and moves his feet. That's how I look at him.
That's rich coming from you, seeing as you've been decked more times than he has, but he's the stiff one?
I've never met a stiff white man who could ever outbox me, ever in my life. Amateur, pro, sparring, anything.
Okay, then what was John McDermott?
Ever. And I don't think Usyk's that man either. Well, I actually know he's not.
Sure.
Listen, I watched the Joshua 2 fight the other day with him.
Oh.
And AJ's a big old boy, and he does his basics all right. But he is a plodder, slow, methodical man with his hands up round his face, walking forward. And
If he's a plotter, and he's slow, and you're not, then why did he knock out Ngannou?
And you didn't.
Why was he able to catch Ngannou with hard shots and you weren't?
Why?
He gets deterred by a couple of jabs and a bit of head movement, and he pushed him all the way. It was a very close fight, that second one. On the night when I watched it, I'd had a few Peronis, yeah, and I didn't think it was that close, yeah? But when I watched it after getting the fight with Usyk, I watched it a few times actually, it was very, very close. AJ let it give it away in the last few rounds actually.
As recent as late last year, people thought you gave it away against Francis Ngannou. You didn't do the job you were supposed to do.
From round 10 onwards, he lost that fight.
You lost to Ngannou.
And he lost it by 2 rounds. And I class AJ as a big old plodder, a slow plodder.
That doesn't make sense. If he's big and he's slow and he's a plotter, then how did a big, slow plotter knock out the same Ngannou that you couldn't knock out?
The same Otto Wallin that you couldn't knock out.
If you're so slick and you're so fast, then why did he outperform you against them?
I reckon I could beat him with one hand tied behind my back. So if he's going to have that thing with him, and also, then there's more.
That's the thing with Tyson Fury. There's always more to say.
Because he's a talented talker.
I'm starting to believe that he's a more talented talker than he is a boxer.
I don't just look at a man and think, oh, I can beat him. There's got to be facts behind this, yeah? And I'm speaking facts.
I'm speaking facts. You fought an unheralded John McDermott, and the people in your own country didn't think you won the fight. Many years later, you fought a novice who never had a boxing match in Francis Ngannou, and the same thing happened.
He fought Derek Chisora, who I'm no stranger to. I know Derek's a tough competitor. I've had 3 fights with him, and they've been 3 good fights. But I thought Derek on the night minimum deserved a draw with him.
If we get into anecdotes and annotations and opinions where Fury thinks that Derek deserved a draw with Usyk, well, people, a lot of them, they thought you lost to John McDermott. They thought you lost late last year to Francis Ngannou. The span of time in between those fights...
What's worse, Fury? What's worse? Needing a draw with Chisora or losing to an MMA fighter in his first pro fight?
What's worse? What's worse? Needing a draw with Derek Chisora or getting a controversial decision against John McDermott?
A journeyman.
Tyson Fury can make it sound good because he's such a talented talker.
Sounds good.
It always sounds good when you let him tell it, but there are many facts that he doesn't address, realities that he doesn't go over. How could you sit there calling Anthony Joshua slow when he was able to catch the same guys that you couldn't catch, put away the same guys that you couldn't put away? Factually, that doesn't even make sense.
Cut through the bullshit.
Stick to the facts. You have 5 common opponents with that guy. He knocked out all of them. You only knocked out 1.
That can't be because of how slow he is.
Because if he's slower than you are, then you should have been able to catch them the same way that he did. But you got your face all sliced up with Wallin, and you got decked by Ngannou.
He didn't.
That can't be because of how fast you are and how slow he is. That can't be because of how defensible you are and how slow he is. If he's so slow, he should have got his face sliced up by Wallin the same as you. But he didn't.
Don't repeat my own words back to me thinking you're gonna sound smart.
That styles make fights and triangle theories don't work. When you have 5 common opponents with the same guy, it stops being a triangle. It stopped being a triangle a long time ago.
Styles.
The 5 common opponents you have all have different styles. So why is it that with your style, you weren't able to put them away? And with your style, in some instances, you languish.
Because you're overrated.
Your win over Wilder is overrated. Talented talker mixed with some hyperbole and cooperation from the American media and some American content creators leads us here.
The silver lining.
It's all good to analyze this stuff, and it's all good to talk about it, but we'll find out what's what and who's who in May.
The time for talking is almost over.